The Maine coast gets so cold this time of year, the waves sound like they've got teeth. Every morning, I still open the door to the porch my husband built, run my fingers along the railing roughened by salt, and tell myself, I still have this house. I still have him. I'm 62, widowed 7 years, living quietly in a small town where everybody recognizes your face. Last month, I had surgery, and the pain meds made my thoughts come and go like fog. Ryan, my son, started helping me way too much. Deb, my best friend of 30 years, brought soup, held my hand, and said, I've got you. Then one day, an unfamiliar envelope was waiting on my doorstep. Move-out notice. Possession in 30 days. I just stood there, frozen. The first thought in my head wasn't who would do this. It was, did my own son sell my house? And in the paperwork, the buyer's name stopped my heart for a full second. My husband, Frank, was never a man for sweet words. He loved you with work. That front porch, every board he picked himself, still smells faintly of pine sap mixed with sea salt. He built it one winter when the wind cut like a blade, his hands cracked raw, lips blue, but his eyes bright. And he hung a little wooden sign that read, Carter's Place, like the house deserved a name because it belonged to someone. When Frank died, I didn't promise I'd be strong. I promised one simple thing. I would keep the house. Keep it the way you keep a piece of your life. Keep it the way you keep a morning greeting when you open the door and listen to the waves. I lived quietly. Part-time at the town library just to stay around people. Tea on the porch in the afternoons, watching little boats out in the distance. I wasn't rich, but I had peace. Then this season, I had hip surgery. Pain is the fastest way to strip a person of pride. The medication made my mind drift like mist. Ryan came home right then. Ryan is 34. He used to be the kind of boy who fell asleep with his arms around my neck and told me, Mom, you're my home. But the last few years, he'd been bouncing jobs, talking about opportunity, investments, one big move to change everything. He still called me Mom, still said he loved me. Only now it sounded rushed, like an assignment. The day he walked in, he scanned the place like an inspector. The windows, the stairs, the porch steps. This house is dangerous, he said. If you fall again, you could die. I bristled, but my leg was wrapped in white bandages. I sighed. You're here a few days, just help me out. He set his bag down, opened my cabinet, checked my pills like a doctor. From now on, I'm handling it. You don't do anything. Deb came too. Deb lived a few blocks away. 30 years ago when Frank died, she was the one who sat beside me through the whole funeral. She didn't say much, just handed me tissues, warm water, and her presence. I always thought, life took my husband, but it gave me Deb so I wouldn't drown. She brought chicken soup and buttered bread and said softly, Evelyn, stop trying to carry it all. I'm here. I believed her. I believed her the way you believe family. 3 days later, Ryan drove me to the pharmacy for my refill. I sat on the plastic chair, clutching my purse, my head floating. The young pharmacist called my name. Mrs. Carter. Ryan stood up before I could, flashed the card, signed. Ryan, I started. Sit down, he cut in. You're shaking. The pharmacist looked from me to him, polite but cautious. Mrs. Carter, would you like me to go over the instructions with you directly? Ryan smiled. She can't really hear it. I'll listen. Something tightened in my chest. Not because of the pharmacist, because of Ryan. Because of the way he spoke like I wasn't me anymore. On the drive home, I asked, why did you say I can't hear? He squeezed the steering wheel, irritated. Don't pick at everything. I'm taking care of you. Deb, in the back seat, smoothed it over. He's worried. Let the young ones handle things. The young ones. Just like that, I felt myself placed one step lower, so gently it almost felt reasonable. One afternoon, Ryan spread a stack of papers across my kitchen table, right under our wedding photo. Sign a few places, Mom. Just insurance, taxes, the house stuff. I want everything settled before I head back to Portland. I put on my glasses and tried to read. Small print. Dense language. Too many terms. Leave it here, I said. I'll read it tomorrow when I'm clearer. He sighed, the sigh of someone put upon by an old stubborn mother. We don't have time. They need it. Deb stood behind me and rested her hand on my shoulder. That familiar touch softened me. Evelyn, just sign and be done. Your boy's looking out for you. So I signed. Once. Twice. My pen bled a little because my hand was trembling. There was one tiny moment I remember now, like a thin blade. When I set the pen down, Ryan said quietly, thinking I couldn't hear, "Done. We're good." Deb let out a small laugh like relief. Told you, easy. That night I didn't sleep. Around 2 in the morning, pain woke me up. I hobbled to the kitchen for water. Through the kitchen door, I heard Ryan on the porch speaking low. The wind was screaming, but I still caught it. Yeah, she signed. Yep, tomorrow. Don't let anybody see. I froze. The glass in my hand went cold. Deb appeared from the living room wrapped in a shawl. Her eyes flicked, just for a second. You okay? Thirsty, I lied. She nodded soft. Go back to bed. Tomorrow's a long day. The way she said go back to bed felt like being lulled, not by medicine, but by familiarity. And as I stepped back into the dark, I heard the name of the person on the other end of that call. A week later, I went out to collect the mail. Buried in the flyers was a thick envelope from a company I'd never heard of. I opened it. The first words were ICE. Notice of possession, move out timeline. Possession in 30 days. New owner. I read it again and again like the meaning would change if I stared long enough. My ears rang. I sat hard on the porch step. The ocean was still there, blue and cold, but it felt like the ground under me had been pulled away. Ryan stepped outside holding coffee. He looked at the paper in my hands and didn't look surprised at all. Explain, I said. My voice didn't even sound like mine. He set the mug down. You already signed, Mom. You just forgot. I stared at him. You sold my house? He shrugged. I did it for you. You can't live alone here anymore. Who bought it? I asked. He turned away, bored with the conversation. Someone good. You won't be treated badly. That night I sat in front of Frank's photo and felt abandoned inside my own home. I looked again at the tiny line in the document. Buyer, D. Lane. I read it 3 times, then whispered just one word. Deb, that Sunday Ryan brought me to church. You need to see people. Stop spiraling. But the moment I walked in, I felt the looks. Not pity, judgment. Pastor Allen shook my hand. Evelyn, I hear you're going through a hard season. But don't worry, Ryan only wants what's best. I froze. I hadn't told anyone. Deb slid beside me and linked her arm through mine, like she was supporting a frail woman. Evelyn's tired, she said. She's stressed. She's misunderstanding things. In the little coffee room behind the sanctuary, teaspoons clinked against mugs like everyone was trying to keep things normal. I'd barely sat down when Linda, who always used to compliment my baking, leaned toward the women beside her, loud enough for me to hear. Older folks get stubborn. Having a child step in is a blessing. An older man with silver hair, I remembered his name was Harold, frowned. A blessing doesn't mean selling somebody's house without them knowing. Linda gave a small laugh. But she signed. Her son says she signed. My face went hot. My hands shook around my coffee. I didn't sell, I said quietly but clearly. The room paused for half a breath. Then Pastor Allen stepped in like a man putting out a fire. Evelyn, you're in pain and under stress. We should let Ryan handle this calmly. The word calmly dropped like a coffin lid. People nodded, looking at me with that gaze that's half sympathy and half avoidance. And I understood something awful. In a small town, your dignity can be stolen with one sentence. She's confused. The next day, I forced myself to walk to the grocery store alone, just to prove to myself I still could. At the checkout, the young cashier glanced at me, then at Ryan standing behind me, like she was silently asking who the real decision maker was. I reached for my wallet, but Ryan held his card out first. My mom forgets things, he said lightly, like he was talking about the weather. The cashier smiled politely, then looked at me. I heard you might be moving soon. That's too bad. I didn't remember telling anyone that. I looked around. Two women in the next lane stopped talking, glanced over, then pretended to stare at the candy rack. One whispered, "She must be making it hard on her son." I gripped the edge of the counter and stood as tall as I could. "I haven't decided anything," I said. Ryan smiled, a half-soothing, half-warning smile. "Mom's tired," he said. "She says things." I wanted to scream, "I'm not so tired I can lose my house." But I heard Frank's voice in my head. "Don't give them what they want, a blow-up that proves they're right about you." So I swallowed it. And that silence felt like being pushed one step farther out of my own town. And when I stepped into the parking lot, Deb was waiting, like she'd known exactly where I'd be. I called the bank for statements. The representative asked, "Mrs. Carter, would you like us to speak with your authorized user?" "Authorized user?" I said. "Ryan Carter." Cold ran up my spine. I didn't remember authorizing anything. "Send me the statements," I said carefully, "and list any transactions tied to real estate." She hesitated. "There are charges and transfers related to closing costs." "Recipient?" I asked. "Deborah Lane." I set the phone down. The kitchen spun. I braced myself against the counter. I went next door to Martha Henderson. Martha opened the door, took one look at me, and didn't waste time. "Tell me," I told her, voice cracking. Her eyes darkened. "Do you remember the day you signed?" "Not clearly," she nodded. "My camera caught a strange man at your place that night. Didn't look like normal business. I saved the footage." I almost cried right on her porch. Not because of the footage, because I finally felt seen as a person again. I called the number on the notice and demanded copies of the contract. The title company rep went quiet, then said, "Mrs. Carter, can you come in? There are some things in your file that don't look right." Martha drove me. In the waiting room, I saw a well-dressed couple in their 50s with Boston accents. The man held a folder. The woman held a printed photo of my house. I recognized Frank's porch railing immediately. My throat tightened. "Excuse me, what property are you here for?" The woman smiled politely. "A little cottage by the water. We're buying it to retire. They said the new owner wants to resell right away." New owner? Resell? They didn't know they were standing in front of my home. They were standing inside a scam. Inside the office, the rep pointed at the notarization block. "This notary's license looks expired, and the signing location doesn't match." My voice shook. I didn't sell. I was on medication. I was pressured. His expression changed. Less corporate, more human. "You need an attorney, and we're pausing possession until we confirm everything." In the hallway, the Boston couple passed by. The man muttered, "We already put down a deposit. Hopefully we can get the title transferred in time." The word "in time" squeezed my chest like a hand. That afternoon, Deb walked into my house without knocking. In her hand was a brand new ring of keys with a tag still on it. She set the keys on my table like a verdict. "I heard you called the title company." I looked at her. "Deb, you bought my house?" She laughed like I'd asked something ridiculous. "I bought it to keep it safe. You think I'd let a stranger buy it?" "I didn't sell," I said. I didn't agree. Deb leaned back in Frank's chair and crossed her arms. "You signed. You just don't remember. You were on meds." Then she said the thing that turned my blood to ice. "You can stay. I'll rent it back to you, cheap. As long as you behave." Behave. The word hit my dignity like a slap. And in that exact moment, Ryan stepped into the kitchen. And I knew they'd planned this together. Ryan walked in like a kid caught stealing. He didn't look at me. He looked at Deb. Deb spoke first, sharp. "Say it." Ryan swallowed. "Mom, I just needed money." My chest tightened. "You needed money, so you sold my house?" He rushed out the excuse like a lifeline. "You don't need all of it. You're alone. It's not safe. I was going to move you somewhere better." "Better for you," I said quietly. "Or better for me." He went silent. Deb stepped in with that fake practical tone. Evelyn, you have to understand. Ryan's in debt. I helped both of you. I stared at her. By taking my house? She shrugged, and her voice turned hard. You're old. What do you need a house like this for? A house belongs to someone who can use it. Then Ryan's voice changed, steadier, colder. If you make a scene, Mom, I'll file for guardianship. The doctor even said you forget things. Deb nodded. I'll testify. You're not stable right now. That chill didn't come from the ocean. It came from the word guardianship. A legal cage people can put an older person into with paperwork and a smile. I sat down. I breathed. And I chose one thing. Silence, but the kind of silence that fights. The next morning, Martha drove me to a lawyer in the next town over. Real estate and elder financial abuse cases. He examined the POA paperwork and tapped the notary's seal. This notary's license is expired. The signing location doesn't match. If you signed while heavily medicated, we may have coercion. I asked barely above a whisper. But he's my son. The lawyer looked at me without judgment. You're a mother, and you're a victim. Both can be true. He wrote out the plan, immediate. Emergency notice to the title company to freeze possession. Report suspected elder financial exploitation. Request a protective order if they escalate threats. Gather evidence, camera footage, medical timeline, bank transfers, texts. That afternoon, the Boston couple showed up at my fence. They looked like decent people, gray at the temples, retirement dreams in their eyes. The man said politely, We're sorry to bother you. We put money down on this house. We just wanted to see it once. I stood on Frank's porch step, my hand gripping the railing he built. This is my home, I said slowly. I'm not selling. The woman went pale. But we signed with the new owner, Deborah Lane. In that moment, I didn't hate them. I saw them as more victims. People in their 50s who saved up to retire somewhere quiet. I just saw the trap widening. Please keep every document, I told them. You may need an attorney too. They backed away, stunned, and I felt like I'd watched my future get tugged through someone else's hands by a thread. Then the evidence came in, and like most people who think they're smart, Deb and Ryan had been careless. The text messages read like knives. Deb, it's done. Don't forget my cut. Ryan, I just need enough to cover my debt. She'll stay quiet. Deb, if she fights, say she's confused. I'll testify. I'd thought losing the house would be the worst pain. But nothing hurt like seeing the way they talked about me, as an obstacle. Not a mother, not a person. Martha squeezed my hand. You're not alone. This time I cried, not collapsing, not begging, just letting the numbness finally wash out. When the title company froze the file, Deb showed up at my door again. No smile this time. What did you do? She snapped. Do you want to ruin me? I stared at her. No, you did that yourself. Ryan stood behind her, eyes red. Mom, do you really want me to go to jail? That question crushed me for a second. I remembered him at 8 years old with a fever on my chest. I remembered all the nights I worked late, all the lunches I packed, all the sacrifices that felt like love. Then I remembered behave. I remembered guardianship. I remembered she'll stay quiet. I looked at Ryan. Do you think I'm your mother? Or your collateral? He sank into a chair. In the courtroom, Deb wore a soft-colored blouse and a face full of practiced concern. Ryan looked at me like he was the wounded one. Deb's attorney said, Mrs. Carter is older, medicated, possibly forgetful. My client bought the property to protect her. My attorney laid everything out, medical timeline and dosage windows, Martha's camera footage of the notary visit, expired notary license, bank transfers, the cut texts, and the Boston couple's deposit. Proof Deb planned a fast flip. The air changed. Deb fidgeted. Ryan stared at the floor. The judge asked Deb, how do you explain the expired notary license and mismatched location? Deb stammered, I didn't know. The judge turned to Ryan. How do you explain these texts? Ryan cried. I panicked. I'm in debt. Deb said Mom could still stay. I didn't want to hurt her. I stood. My hip still hurt, but my spine didn't bend. I am a mother, I said slowly, but I am not someone to be bought and sold. I want justice, not for revenge, but so they don't do this to anyone else. Ryan looked up like he'd been slapped. Deb's eyes hardened with hatred. The judge brought the gavel down and accepted criminal investigation for elder financial abuse and notary fraud. And when that sound hit the room, I understood something for the first time. Even family can become evidence. A few days later, my lawyer called me in. Mrs. Carter, there's something you should know. Frank set up a revocable trust years ago and transferred the house into it. I sat there stunned, like I could hear Frank from far away. Stay calm, Evelyn. Hold your ground. Because the house was in the trust, the fraudulent transfer couldn't produce clean title. Deb thought she'd bought my life, but she'd only bought paper. The town switched the way small towns do. The people who'd whispered avoided my eyes. Pastor Allen apologized, sincere but late. I accepted it without chasing my old place in the coffee circles. I learned one thing: peace doesn't need an audience. A week later, the library hosted a small senior workshop, protecting your finances and paperwork as you age. I didn't want to speak. I hated being the story. But Martha looked at me and said, if you don't talk, someone else will be you. I stood in front of a circle of folding chairs, silver hair, wrinkled hands, and I saw my future and my mother's past. I spoke slowly, without a microphone. I'm not telling this story to make people hate my son. I'm telling it because I used to believe that when you get older, you should give in for the sake of peace. But that kind of peace is peace inside fear. An older woman in the front row asked, her voice trembling, if the person who made you sign is your own child, can you really make it a legal matter? My throat tightened the way it had when I first read that move-out notice. Family is where you're supposed to be loved, I said, not where someone gets to take your voice away. If someone uses the word blood to force your silence, that's not family. That's an excuse. I pulled out the note I'd taped to my fridge and read it like a vow. Don't sign when you're tired. Don't sign when you're in pain. Don't sign just because someone is rushing you. The room went quiet. Then an older man with a cane nodded and whispered, thank you. I thought I was the only one afraid. For the first time, I didn't feel ashamed. I felt like my wound could be someone else's fence. One rainy afternoon, I received a letter from Ryan from his mandated rehabilitation program. His handwriting. Mom, I'm not asking you to forgive me. I just want you to know this. I turned you into something I could trade for relief. I hate the person who did that. I'm learning how to return what I broke. Even though I know some things can't be returned. I'm sorry I called you confused. I'm sorry I let anyone tell you to behave. If one day you want to see me, I'll wait. If not, I'll still pay it back. Ryan. I folded the letter and cried for a long time. Not because I was ready to open my door to him, but because somewhere inside him, a light had flickered back on, and he could finally see what he'd done. The next morning, the sky cleared. The ocean stayed cold, but the sun was thin and steady. I took down the Carter's Place sign and cleaned it. The paint was chipped. I repainted every letter and hung it back in the exact spot Frank had chosen. Martha stopped by with a bundle of hydrangeas. Evelyn, you're still here. I looked out at the water, listening to the waves breathe. Yeah, I whispered, like I was speaking to Frank and to myself. I'm still here. Then I taped the note back on my fridge, big and bold. Don't sign when you're tired. Don't sign when you're in pain. Don't sign just because someone is rushing you. Because getting older doesn't mean handing the keys of your life to anyone, not even your own child.